When I was 19, I got pregnant with Everly. And kind of where the vows were coming from was her dad, her biological dad. We were in a relationship, but it wasn't very healthy. Definitely made me feel unworthy, and just being 19 and pregnant just made me feel unworthy to begin with. Just going to college and being pregnant and no one else was pregnant, and going to the church where I was 19 and like just feeling like everyone was judging me. So I feel like I kind of stopped going to church for that reason, just because I felt so like, oh, I don't need to be here. Like I already messed up. And I grew up in a Christian household, but that definitely just kind of sent me down a path of just feeling bad about myself. So then the relationship made me feel bad about myself. Like my friends, I would tell all my friends, like, oh, I'm never getting married. Like, I'm never getting married. I'm never going to find someone. Like, it's just, this is it, you know? Like, good thing I have Everly. And so then I met Cole, and, like, everyone saw a change in me, like, instantly. Like, it was just totally, like, what I always say 360, but it was a 180. Like, just my happiness, and just, like, he, like, brought back my self of just, like, making me feel like, oh, you're so beautiful, and I don't care that you have a kid, and I don't care that you were 19 and pregnant, I don't care that you were in a bad relationship, you made wrong mistakes. And so he was just always really good about reassuring me, even just, like, I feel like before we even, like, had a crush on each other, he was just super, like, we had really good conversations. Like, we had one conversation at IHOP, and we both just, like, opened up with each other. It was me, him, and his friend John Steven, and we all just told our stories, and that was the first time where I feel like I, like, told my testimony to someone, you know? And it was just to these two guys that I met 4 days before. And so it was funny to me that I just felt so comfortable with them like that. And he really did make me feel like no judgment whatsoever. And like, I think my favorite word, and I think I even used it in my vows, is redemption. Because I feel like no matter what, like, yes, I had sex before I was married, but, and I'm sure he'll like talk about this, but he did things before he was married that he's not proud of. And a sin is a sin. And so for me, it was just about redemption and me feeling like I was worthy again. And he really did make me feel that way. And it was God. Was pregnant and
you have
a bad relationship, you made bad, and used it in my vows, is redemption. Because I feel like no matter what, like, yes, I had sex before I was married, but, and I'm sure he'll like talk about this, but he did things before he was married that he's not proud of. And a sin is a sin. And so for me, it was just about redemption and me feeling like I was worthy again. And he really did make me feel that way. And it was God also. It wasn't just Cole, because I don't want to just say he, but it was a mix of both, and just, it was all perfect timing. I felt like I was just going down the wrong path, and he totally brought me out of it.
I love that. I love that so much. And I think redemption is the perfect word.
Yeah, that's like my favorite word.
I think, and that's what it does. And I think that's what marriage should be a picture of.
Yeah.
Is how we relate to Jesus. And I want Cole to tell a little bit about his background as well, because I think what you touched on is so true and real, especially in the church world, that sometimes, at least growing up, like sex was the one unforgivable sin.
Yeah.
And so people would be virgins, but then they would feel like they were pure. But I think that purity is such a deeper thing than just the not doing of an action or doing of an action, if that makes sense. And I think being a pure-hearted person, you can be redeemed from that if maybe you've gone too far or different places. And what a picture of that with Cole. Or even if you've never done that, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in this place of purity. It's a relationship with Jesus and allowing him to wash you clean and make you new no matter where you're at. But Cole, I want you to tell us about where you came from and the background. The reason I love this is because you guys are coming from kind of different journeys, yet how redemption's the word. God redeems it, makes it this beautiful picture of what actually life with him is about. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a small town in Alabama where, you're in the Bible Belt. Everybody goes to First United Methodist or First Baptist or something like that. So I feel like my viewpoint of Christianity was like a little different because until I got involved in I almost call it a real church, but like a real relationship with God, I definitely had the mindset of God as exactly what you're explaining, where obviously God intends for you to save yourself for marriage. So like whenever I was at a very young age, even just like 10, I remember telling myself like, I want to save myself for marriage.
Yeah.
Pretty much once I found out like what sex was, I was like, oh, I want that to be with my wife. But it can be toxic in the sense that you make that your God as opposed to your relationship with God.
So good.
And it's almost so funny looking back on, how you can feel like you were doing good while you're almost even turning more people away from Jesus. Like I look back in some of my early, either middle school or high school years where I wasn't partying or drinking or smoking or having sex or whatever, but I was absolutely not leading people to Jesus by any extent because I was just that Christian guy who was judgy or who was, hypocritical or whatever it was. And it was just a huge eye-opener through the process as some of my best friends in high school, whether they lost their virginity or whatever it was, just to have those conversations with them. And for me, myself, whether it was, struggling with lust or struggling with so many other sins that it's like, I didn't have sex, but like purity is walking with the Lord. Like it's as simple as that. Like it's staying close to the shepherd and it's just like listening to his voice. And like if you're not walking with the Lord, just because you're not having sex, like you are not pure. Like and that's why we need Jesus. We need the blood of Jesus to redeem us and to be pure. And whether that's why Jesus came to die on the cross. He didn't come to die on the cross for the pure. He came to die on the cross for the impure because we're all impure. So I think me trying to walk a maybe holier than thou art, righteous life, whatever you want to call it, is I think even more revolting to God because it's like, who are you? Like who do you think you are? So Savannah really like brought that out in me. That like how you were explaining with your wife, like though our past may be different and it'd be easy to look at one's past and think, oh, that's dirtier. Savannah has like literally the most pure heart I've like ever known. Yeah. So like the way that she is with her daughter and people and everything is just like, man, like everything that I thought is, I'm almost seeing it through Jesus's eyes, and it's a beautiful thing to experience.
I love that. I think it's so what you said. And purity is the consistency of the nature of God just coming out in your life just through relationship, right? And so, Savannah, I actually want you to talk a little bit about, like, to a young person, to a young lady, or a young man who maybe feels as you felt, unworthy, not willing, feeling like, you kind of missed it. Maybe I missed my chance. I won't get married. Who's going to marry me? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? But that feeling of unworthiness, I feel like it really is running rampant in our generation. Mm-hmm. And so if you had an opportunity, like you were sitting on the couch and you had a young lady sitting in your living room telling you, this is how I feel, this is where I'm at, what would you say to them that you wish someone would have said to you at 19 or 20 when, before you met Cole, before you had this, amazing man in your life who brought all this stuff out of you didn't realize was still in there? What would you say to them?
I feel like that's so tough because I did have so many people tell me things like my mom, my sister, my best friends, they were all just like, what are you doing? Like you deserve so much better than what you're getting. Just because you have a kid doesn't mean that someone's not going to like you. Like they put all these things in my head, but I just didn't believe them. I just was like, no, that's not true. I don't believe anyone. And I feel like I've talked to so many girls now too, like that were me. And like, they just like, no matter what I say, you can tell they just kind of they're in a rut where it's just, so for me, I try so hard just to be like, almost like show them like this is like my testimony of like, I was so down a deep end and I never thought I was going to get married, never thought anyone was going to love me. I mean, I just think for girls to know that there are guys like Cole out there, because I didn't even know that there was. Like I feel like I always like went for the bad guys, which a lot of girls do. Like that's just, the girls go for the bad guys, I feel like, in high school. And so for me, it was just realizing that there are such good guys out there that are going to love you, and they're not just going to only want you for one thing. And like me and Cole saving ourselves together for marriage was also huge for me, just because it was hard for us both, obviously. But I feel like it was easier for me in a sense because I knew what it was like if I were to give it up to him, just like I had already felt that way before. that I knew like the ending result of waiting was going to be so much more special with him. So I feel like it's awesome that we both had the different ends of it, but for me it was like even more special because I was like, I waited for this guy. I know what it's like not to wait, and like this is so much more special than anything that could have, So for me, I would try to tell them that. I mean, it's so hard because I feel like at that point they're not gonna listen, but it really is realizing that like God loves you and He's gonna redeem you, and you will find someone that is gonna love you.
I feel like oftentimes, whether you're she's talked to so many girls in her almost exact same situation, but I feel like so many people, whatever rut or funk you're in, you feel like you're either the only one in that situation, or even if you're like aware, like, oh, I know that there's other people like me, you just feel like, no, but this is my specific failure. Like, yeah, maybe you got out of it, but there's no way I'm going to get out of it.
Yeah.
Or like, you found this, or like whatever, like, oh, you got so much from blessed, or like for some reason you feel like you're almost cursed with like an even worse. And not that it's like a pity party me kind of thing, but I feel like that is the enemy's way of just like convincing you that there isn't hope, and that essentially there isn't Jesus. And with Jesus there is hope. Totally. And it doesn't always come in the form of like, we definitely don't want this to come across as like, oh, Cole saved me. Like, this is just like a Jesus thing where like Savannah saved me. And in a sense that like, that God brought man and woman together for a beautiful thing. And that, obviously how we met and what we saved each other from, it's all Jesus and it's a beautiful thing. But like our walk together for the next 30, 50 years, that's going to be even so much more beautiful because that's what God intended for marriage to be like. So obviously she can speak to it so much more, but I do think that whenever you're in that funk, with any sin, it literally just puts blinders on the truth that's like right in front of you.
Totally.
So yeah, I would just like really just like want to shake that person, and just, especially if I could go back and like, cause I love my wife so much, and like how I've heard she was before me, just almost like a different person, not in like a bad sense, but just almost like in a hopeless sense. It makes me so sad. I wish I could go back and like encourage her that Jesus is gonna bring hope to you, and not in the form of me, but just like in the form of like who you are, because of who Jesus says you are. So
I love how you said, like, I think sometimes we do look relationships to be the saving grace of our life, like I'll find that guy, but God was just using Cole as a provision to show you himself.
Yeah.
And I think that he says, the truth, and the truth will set you free. What is the truth? Is that when we face Jesus, there's an absolute truth. There's no place that we have to hide anything anymore. There's no such thing as lying, right? And I think sometimes when we face Jesus, we think that we have to hide the things in our lives that maybe we're ashamed of, that maybe we didn't want to deal with. And on one side of things, I think it's almost easier to point to, like, I had a kid at 19. Sometimes even for Cole, for guys like us, like, we grew up I was too afraid to, like, I thought the devil would show up in my room if I had sex. Like, that wasn't because I loved Jesus, it's because I was a little bit afraid, right?
Yeah.
But I think there was things in my emotional psyche that I had given up that I didn't realize I had given up. And the way that God can redeem that when he puts someone in front of you that doesn't judge you, because it's how, and really in a perfect form, that's how he looks at us. In a perfect way, when God sees you, he's not judgmental, it's not angry, he's not upset, he's not saying you're unworthy, but he's actually saying the opposite. So when we face the truth of who Jesus is, it's impossible for us to hide anything. In fact, the best thing we can do is be like, okay, this is everything I got. I know I've messed up. And God redeems that. And he puts people in your life that help redeem that. He puts pastors in your life. He puts friends in your life. He puts, for you guys, he puts a spouse in your life that helps redeem that. And I think it comes in so many different packages and forms. But the whole point is, and I love that you said this, it's redemption. So God took someone who felt unworthy. And I'm sure actually Cole, because I don't want to speak for you, but in a lot of ways for me, I felt unworthy. Because for guys, sometimes looking at pornography or lust or different things like that, that can bring just as amount of unworthiness. And then God say, hey, he brings both of you and says, hey, you're so worthy. And I have redeemed all of that from, and I'm going to use it for my good. And now you have a beautiful family. You're together, and you're influencing people for Jesus. And I think that what a beautiful story. And we're thankful for you, because I believe there's going to be a lot of young people who needed to hear what you guys had to say today, and God's going to bring redemption into to their life and into their relationships because of what you guys shared today. We're super thankful. We're excited for what God's going to speak to it forward. Reimagine. I'm going to pray real quick, and then we're going to close out.
Sounds great.
God, we thank you so much. God, I thank you for the LeBrants. I thank you for their story of redemption. And Lord, I pray right now, even through this online interview, that it's going to speak to the hearts of the young people, and that there's going to be just a feeling of they are worthy of your love, and they are worthy of who you are. And you're just going to speak a story of redemption into the lives of young people that are listening today. Those who feel like they're too far gone, you're going to bring them in, and you're going to bring them near. God, we thank you. We thank you for this moment. We thank you for this conversation, that it was blessed by you. And Jesus, you're so good. In your name, amen.
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 Well, Forward Reimagine, we love you guys. We are so excited for you guys to see this and to enjoy conference. Have a great rest of your conference, and we'll see you soon.